At 78, Roger Staubach finally allowed himself to speak about the shadows that never made it into the highlight reels. Fans knew him as Captain America, the calm commander with the spotless image. They saw the precision throws, the military posture, the quiet faith in every huddle. What they never saw was the pressure that lived behind that image, the weight of duty that did not end when he left the Navy, the expectations that followed him into every locker room conversation, every leadership meeting, every moment when the Dallas Cowboys were tearing themselves apart behind closed doors. For decades, he was praised as the moral compass of America's team, the spotless warrior, the man who brought discipline to chaos. But perfection has a cost, and Staubach carried that cost longer than anyone ever understood. There were rivalries inside those walls that never made the newspaper. There were battles for control between stars who refused to bow to his military-style leadership. There were choices he made that created lifelong resentments. And there were truths he never admitted until now. Truths about tension with teammates who hated his influence. Truths about coaches who questioned his conviction. Truths about the silent war between image and identity. These are the 5 hidden truths that defined his legacy. The truths he never escaped. The truths that reveal the real Roger Staubach, not the myth, not the poster, but the man who fought a private fight while leading a nation's team. Roger Staubach entered professional football carrying a weight few quarterbacks ever understood. Before he became the face of the Dallas Cowboys, he had already lived a life marked by structure, sacrifice, and obedience. His years at the Naval Academy shaped him into a man who believed in order above comfort and responsibility above ego. Those principles followed him through combat service in Vietnam, and they became the foundation of the leader he would eventually become in the NFL. When he finally arrived in Dallas, he was older than most rookies and carried the discipline of a man who had faced realities far beyond football fields. The Cowboys of the late 60s and early 70s were a fascinating contradiction. They were marketed as America's team with clean uniforms, iconic stars, and national appeal. Behind that glossy image lived a locker room filled with clashing personalities, private tensions, and internal divides. Tom Landry, the coach who built the dynasty, demanded absolute precision from his players. His system was cold and mathematical, and many believed only a certain kind of mind could truly thrive in it. When Staubach arrived, he carried a style of leadership that was very different. His calm authority and military discipline were admired by some and resented by others. To the public, he represented control and courage. Inside the organization, he became a symbol of a deeper conflict. Some players believed his leadership was too strict and too idealistic for a team filled with free spirits. Others saw him as the stabilizing force that allowed the Cowboys to survive moments of chaos. As Dallas pushed through seasons filled with injuries, controversies, and shifting power dynamics, Staubach became the quiet center of gravity. Yet, that position came with a cost. Holding a divided room together required decisions that created silent fractures. Every choice he made to protect the team's identity left someone feeling betrayed or overlooked. Staubach's rise from backup to starter also intensified tensions. Veteran players who had fought under different leadership styles questioned whether his approach fit the emotional fabric of the team. Younger players saw him as a standard impossible to reach. Coaches sometimes viewed his independence as a challenge to their authority. As the Cowboys moved closer to greatness, the pressure around him deepened. Every victory made the expectations heavier, and every setback revealed new cracks within the organization. Through it all, Staubach maintained the outer calm that defined him. What the public never saw were the private meetings filled with disagreement, the closed-door debates over direction, and the nights when he questioned whether he could hold the identity of America's team together. The conflict between his disciplined worldview and the complex personalities around him formed the core tension of his career. This was the world in which the 5 hidden truths took shape. They were not born from scandal in the tabloids. They were born from leadership under fire, from choices made in silence, and from the pressure of carrying a franchise built on image and expectation. Tom Landry stood as one of the most distinctive figures in football history. His fedora, his stoic expression, and his painstakingly engineered system represented the intellectual transformation of the sport. He demanded precision in every movement and expected players to fit into a structure that rarely bent for individual preference. To most of the world, he was a symbol of order and innovation. Inside the Dallas Cowboys, he was the architect of a dynasty that required total trust. That expectation shaped every relationship he built and every quarterback who stepped onto his field. For Roger Staubach, this relationship became far more complicated. The origins of their conflict lived within the contrast between Landry's rigid philosophy and Staubach's natural instinct for improvisation. Landry believed every play had a correct answer and that the quarterback's duty was to execute that answer without deviation. Staubach believed leadership demanded adaptation, especially in moments when a defense shattered the expected path. As Staubach began to rise within the roster, his tendency to escape the pocket and extend plays frustrated Landry's carefully crafted vision. Even with respect between them, the tension grew. Landry saw the risk of losing control of the system he built. Staubach saw the risk of becoming a mechanical extension of a playbook rather than a field general trusted to make decisions. Their silent struggle shaped their early years together and never fully disappeared. The defining moment arrived during the 1971 season when Landry split the quarterback duties between Staubach and Craig Morton. Landry believed the team needed structure and consistency. Morton understood the system perfectly and operated within its limits. Staubach, in contrast, brought energy that lifted the entire roster, but did so in ways that often broke from Landry's rigid guidelines. With the team stumbling, Landry attempted a strategy that puzzled fans and players. He alternated quarterbacks during games, switching possessions like gears in a machine. The chaos created confusion in the locker room and pressure on Staubach to prove he could lead without abandoning the structure Landry demanded. The turning point happened in a late-season matchup when the Cowboys began to unravel under the two-quarterback experiment. The offense stalled. Players grew irritated. Momentum felt lost. Staubach stood on the sideline watching Morton struggle and knew the team needed a singular voice. He stepped onto the field with a calm intensity, not waiting for permission, but trusting the moment. His improvisational plays created spark after spark. He scrambled. He threaded passes through tight coverage. He extended drives that should have died. The Cowboys rallied behind him. Landry watched with a silent mixture of frustration and recognition. Staubach finished that run of the season with a surge of performances that carried Dallas into the Super Bowl. The victory validated his instincts, but it also crystallized the divide. Landry could not deny Staubach's leadership, yet he did not fully embrace the freedom that defined it. The cold truth is that Staubach's greatest triumph emerged from a decision Landry resisted until circumstance forced his hand. Their respect remained real, but so did the divide between structure and instinct. Staubach proved that leadership required more than obedience. Landry never fully forgave the way Staubach's improvisation overshadowed his system. Staubach never forgot how long he had to wait for trust. Their conflict did not destroy them, but it left a quiet scar running through the heart of America's team. It was the first hidden truth in the legacy of Captain America. Drew Pearson was the kind of receiver who changed the emotional temperature of a game the moment he stepped onto the field. He was bold, competitive, and fearless in the air. Fans adored his clutch plays and his ability to seize moments that defined entire seasons. Teammates respected his fire, though some found it overwhelming. He played with an edge that matched the rising intensity of the 70s Cowboys. His connection with Roger Staubach became one of the most iconic partnerships in football. Yet behind that legendary chemistry lived a tension that rarely surfaced publicly, but shaped their shared legacy. The core of their conflict came from competing ideas about leadership and control. Pearson believed receivers deserved a larger voice in the offense, especially those who consistently delivered in critical moments. Staubach, shaped by military discipline, led with hierarchy and quiet authority. He expected his receivers to adapt to his decisions on the field. Pearson wanted room to influence those decisions. He felt that his ability to read coverages and his instinct for big plays earned him the right to challenge the quarterback's choices. Staubach viewed those challenges as disruptions to order. Their partnership worked because of talent, but behind closed doors, it created friction. Each man believed he understood the moment better than the other. That confidence built greatness, but it also built resentment. The Hail Mary in the 1975 playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings became the defining moment of their connection. Millions remember the pass as a miracle. Few remember the argument that simmered before it. As the Cowboys huddled with seconds left and the season slipping away, Pearson looked at Staubach and insisted he could beat single coverage down the sideline. Staubach initially leaned toward a safer route. The offense had struggled with pressure, and conservative logic said to aim for something shorter. Pearson refused to back down. He told Staubach that hesitation would cost them everything. The huddle grew tense. The crowd drowned out the field, but the disagreement remained clear. Staubach finally trusted the instinct rather than the plan. He dropped back, rolled right, and launched the ball as far as he could throw it. Pearson fought through contact, secured the catch, and sent the Cowboys into one of the most dramatic victories in team history. The stadium erupted. Commentators declared the moment divine. The partnership between Staubach and Pearson became legendary in that instant. But the aftermath inside the locker room told a different story. Pearson celebrated loudly, pointing to his prediction and insisting he saw the play before it happened. Staubach appreciated the result, but felt undermined by Pearson's reaction. What should have been a moment of unity reopened the tension between instinct and authority. Their greatest triumph carried a hidden fracture. The cold truth is that the Hail Mary bound them together in history, while quietly pulling them apart in reality. Pearson's confidence clashed with Staubach's reserved command. Each believed he had carried the moment. Neither admitted how deeply the disagreement cut. The rift never exploded into public view, but it remained a quiet shadow over a legendary partnership. Staubach respected Pearson's greatness, but never forgot the challenge to his authority. Pearson admired Staubach's leadership, but never fully accepted his restraint. Their silent divide became the fourth hidden truth in the story of Captain America. Cliff Harris was the heartbeat of the Cowboys' defense during the most intense years of the franchise. He played safety with a blend of intelligence and violent precision that unsettled even the toughest receivers. Fans embraced him as a symbol of the defensive spirit that balanced Dallas's polished offensive image. Teammates admired his toughness and his refusal to retreat from any challenge. Harris expected accountability from everyone on the roster, and he enforced it with sharp words and sharper hits. His identity was built on confrontation. That identity stood in direct contrast to Roger Staubach's calm authority, which set the stage for a complicated relationship. The conflict between Staubach and Harris stemmed from competing visions of leadership. Harris believed leadership required emotional fire. He expected teammates to match his ferocity, and he grew frustrated when he felt energy dip during difficult stretches of a game. Staubach led through controlled resolve and a measured tone that came from years of military discipline. He believed too much emotion clouded judgment. Harris believed too little emotion weakened purpose. Their disagreements began on the practice field. Harris challenged offensive players openly. Staubach disliked confrontations that threatened unity. To him, order came first. To Harris, passion came first. Their clashing philosophies created tension that teammates felt even when the two men remained professional on the surface. A defining moment unfolded during a 1973 practice session that players later described as one of the most intense days in the Landry era. The offense had struggled for several drives, failing to match the defense's energy. Harris grew irritated and delivered a brutal hit on a receiver during a non-contact drill. The collision sparked outrage from the offensive sideline. Staubach approached Harris calmly and told him the hit crossed the line and threatened team chemistry. Harris fired back, saying the offense needed to toughen up and that leaders could not tolerate softness. The brief exchange escalated when Harris accused the offense of hiding behind discipline instead of fighting with urgency. The field fell silent. Staubach stepped closer. Players expected a confrontation. Instead, he kept his voice low and firm, reminding Harris that leadership demanded restraint, not chaos. Harris shot back that football demanded heart, not quiet lectures. Coaches separated them before the argument grew further. No fists flew, but the divide became clear. Teammates whispered about the moment for weeks. Some believed Staubach won the exchange because of his composure. Others believed Harris won because his passion intimidated the entire field. The moment became symbolic of the internal battle over identity within the Cowboys. Discipline or fire, structure or emotion. Each man believed he carried the right answer. The cold truth is that both men never fully accepted the other's approach. Harris respected Staubach's calm, but believed it limited the emotional edge the team needed. Staubach respected Harris's intensity, but believed it threatened unity. They achieved greatness together, but their visions of leadership never aligned. The Cowboys often thrived on that tension, yet it created a fracture that neither man resolved. It lived in every practice, every huddle, and every quiet moment when the team struggled. It became the third hidden truth in the legacy of Captain America. Calvin Hill was one of the most gifted athletes the Cowboys ever placed in their backfield. He ran with elegance and power, carrying the ball with a fluid stride that made difficult yards look effortless. Fans admired his intelligence and composure. Coaches valued his versatility and quiet strength. He was never the loudest voice in the locker room, but he radiated presence. Hill's approach to the game was thoughtful and refined, shaped by a background far different from many of his teammates. His grace under pressure made him essential to the Cowboys' identity. Yet beneath that calm exterior lived a simmering frustration with Roger Staubach. The conflict between Hill and Staubach came from a growing disconnect about responsibility and recognition. Hill felt the offense relied heavily on his production without acknowledging the pressure placed on him. When the team struggled, Hill often heard criticism directed toward the running game. When the team succeeded, much of the praise shifted toward Staubach's leadership. Hill believed the balance of credit was unfair. He respected Staubach's discipline, but felt the quarterback's image overshadowed contributions from others, especially the quieter players who carried heavy workloads. Staubach, shaped by selfless military values, expected players to accept roles without complaint. He viewed Hill's frustration as a distraction that threatened unity. The tension stayed buried, but it grew every season as the offense evolved. The turning point arrived during the 1972 season. Dallas was fighting through injuries, inconsistent performances, and a growing reliance on Hill's ability to keep the offense stable. In a critical late-season game, the Cowboys trailed early and struggled to generate momentum. Hill delivered several punishing runs that pushed the team back into scoring position. His effort kept the Cowboys alive when the passing game faltered. During halftime, Hill expected the coaching staff to adjust the offense around the success he had created. Instead, the plan shifted toward giving Staubach more control, relying on passing plays that had been ineffective all night. Hill confronted the coaching staff, arguing the team needed to lean on the ground game. Staubach entered the conversation and defended the strategic shift. He believed the game required aggressive decisions and trusted his ability to execute them. Hill interpreted Staubach's stance as another moment when the quarterback insisted on control, even at the risk of ignoring what was working. The argument remained calm but carried sharp edges. Teammates listened from a distance. Hill walked out of the room feeling dismissed. Staubach walked out believing he had upheld his responsibility as the leader of the offense. In the second half, the Cowboys forced a comeback through a mix of passes and short runs, but Hill's contributions received minimal acknowledgement. Reporters focused on Staubach's resilience. Hill answered questions quietly, yet carried disappointment that never fully healed. The cold truth is that Hill felt overshadowed by a leader who never meant to overshadow anyone. Staubach believed he acted in the best interest of the team. Hill believed his sacrifices were overlooked. Their mutual respect masked a quiet resentment that shaped the internal chemistry of the offense. They achieved greatness together, but never reconciled the imbalance between responsibility and recognition. It became a hidden fracture that lived beneath the surface of America's team, and the second hidden truth in the story of Roger Staubach. Danny White stepped into the Dallas Cowboys as one of the most versatile and capable athletes of his era. He served as both punter and quarterback, a rare combination that revealed his intelligence and his adaptability. Coaches admired his steady demeanor. Teammates respected his toughness. Fans saw him as the heir waiting quietly behind a legend. White never tried to imitate Roger Staubach. He built his identity on efficiency, not spectacle, and on patience, not command. Yet his career unfolded under a shadow so long and so heavy that it shaped nearly every choice he made. That shadow was Captain America himself. The tension between Staubach and White grew from the unspoken reality of succession. As Staubach aged, injuries accumulated, and the organization needed to prepare for the future. Landry valued White's reliability and his ability to execute the system cleanly. Many within the organization saw him as the natural successor. Yet Staubach's presence remained overwhelming. His leadership shaped the culture. His legend anchored the brand. White lived in a constant state of comparison, even during moments when he outperformed expectations in practice. Staubach never attempted to undermine him, but the weight of the transition created an invisible barrier. White wanted to lead. Staubach believed his duty was not yet complete. Their paths collided through timing and circumstance rather than personal hostility, but the impact was no less real. The defining moment came during the 1979 season. Staubach was nearing the end of his career, and White was ready to take the reins. During a late season game, the Cowboys found themselves in a physical battle with a desperate opponent. Staubach absorbed several hard hits early, and White prepared to enter the game. Coaches whispered about the possibility of letting White guide the offense if Staubach showed signs of slowing. White warmed up on the sideline, helmet in hand, feeling the weight of a moment he had waited years to claim. Late in the second quarter, Staubach took a crushing hit that left the stadium silent. Teammates rushed to him. Trainers checked his condition. White stepped toward the field expecting the call. Landry looked at him, then looked back at Staubach. Instead of signaling for the change, he waited. Staubach rose, slowly steadied himself, and insisted he could continue. The crowd roared. White stepped back. The decision was made. Staubach returned to the huddle and led a determined drive that ended in a momentum-shifting score. The stadium celebrated the courage of a hero refusing to surrender. On the sideline, White watched the moment with a mix of admiration and resignation. He respected Staubach's heart, but understood that every heroic performance delayed his opportunity. After the game, reporters focused entirely on Staubach's toughness. White answered questions politely, but felt the silent truth settle deeper. He was destined to follow a legend who refused to step aside until the very last possible moment. The cold truth is that Danny White lived inside a legacy he could never escape. Staubach did not intend to hold him back, but the relentless power of his presence created an unbridgeable gap. White admired the man who stood in front of him, yet carried the quiet frustration of a successor forced to wait beyond reason. Staubach respected White's talent, but never acknowledged how deeply the timing of his final years affected him. Their divide remained silent but permanent. It became the first hidden truth in the legacy of Captain America. Walt Garrison was one of the toughest players Roger Staubach ever shared a locker room with. A fullback shaped by rodeo grit and quiet resilience, Garrison represented the raw physical core of the Cowboys' identity. He spoke little, worked relentlessly, and played through pain that would have sidelined most athletes. Fans admired his authenticity. Teammates trusted his honesty. Coaches valued his ability to do the dirty work that made the offense function. Beneath his calm presence lived a unique conflict with Staubach, one that hid behind respect, but carried deeper tension than most realized. The strain between them grew from their different worlds. Staubach came from a disciplined military background where rules were clear and order held everything together. Garrison came from a culture built on instinct and survival, where a man proved himself through toughness rather than structure. Their personalities rarely clashed openly, but their philosophies did. Staubach expected every player to follow the system with precision. Garrison believed the game demanded adaptability and a willingness to break patterns when necessary. He disliked when leadership became too rigid. Staubach disliked when players drifted from the plan. A quiet example of this divide surfaced during a 1972 game when the offense struggled against an aggressive defensive front. Garrison saw opportunities in quick adjustments at the line of scrimmage and tried to suggest changes. Staubach insisted on sticking to the original plan. The tension grew throughout the game. Afterward, Garrison expressed frustration to teammates, saying structure meant nothing if it ignored reality on the field. Staubach viewed his comments as undermining unity. The cold truth is that their mutual respect masked a philosophical divide that never fully healed. It shaped subtle decisions and silent judgments that followed them long after their careers ended. Roger Staubach's journey through the Dallas Cowboys was a constant test of identity. To the public, he remained the flawless commander who rose from military discipline to football immortality. To the organization, he was a stabilizing force during an era shaped by division, ego, and pressure. Yet, behind the polished legacy was a man navigating conflicts that shaped him as deeply as the victories he delivered. The 5 hidden truths surrounding his relationships with Tom Landry, Drew Pearson, Cliff Harris, Calvin Hill, and Danny White reveal a story far more complex than the myth that followed him. These conflicts did not weaken him. They defined the cost of leadership inside America's team. His early struggle with Tom Landry placed him at the center of a philosophical storm. Landry built a system on precision and logic. He believed football was a puzzle with one solution. Staubach believed leadership required flexibility and human instinct. Their silent struggle forced Staubach to balance trust with initiative. He learned that leadership demanded both obedience and independence. The tension forged a quarterback who could win within a system and break it when the moment required. That duality became the foundation of his career. His connection with Drew Pearson revealed the emotional weight of command. Their partnership created miracles, but also created friction over authority. The Hail Mary became the iconic moment that elevated both men into legend, yet it also exposed the pressure Staubach carried when his decisions were questioned by players with equal belief in their instincts. This tension taught him that leadership required humility in the face of brilliance from others. He also learned that even the greatest successes could hide unresolved conflict. The result was a deeper awareness of the fragile balance between confidence and collaboration. Cliff Harris presented a different challenge. The emotional fire of the defensive leader collided with Staubach's controlled intensity. Their confrontation during practice became symbolic of the cultural divide within the Cowboys. Emotion versus order, passion versus restraint. Staubach learned that a team could not survive on discipline alone, nor could it survive on emotion alone. He needed Harris just as Harris needed him. Their tension crystallized the truth that leadership meant embracing differences rather than eliminating them. Staubach understood that not every voice needed to mirror his. The Cowboys thrived when contrasting identities pushed each other toward excellence. Calvin Hill represented the cost of leadership in an entirely different way. His quiet resentment revealed the unseen impact of Staubach's image. Hill felt overshadowed by a narrative that placed the quarterback at the center of every triumph. Staubach respected Hill's contributions, yet underestimated the emotional burden carried by teammates whose sacrifices remained uncelebrated. This conflict taught him that leadership required awareness beyond the huddle. It demanded attention to the unspoken needs of men whose roles carried weight without recognition. Staubach learned that greatness required empathy, not just authority. Danny White symbolized the final lesson in Staubach's journey. Succession is one of the most painful realities in sports. White lived in the long shadow of a legend who refused to surrender the field until every ounce of strength was gone. Staubach never meant to delay his rise. He simply believed his duty was not finished. Yet the effect on White was undeniable. It revealed the inevitable tension between legacy and transition. Staubach learned that leadership also meant knowing when to let go. His final seasons forced him to confront the truth that every era ends and that holding on too tightly creates fractures that outlast the glory of the moment. Even the bonus pick Walt Garrison added depth to the picture. Garrison's straightforward toughness, shaped by a world far different from Staubach's, revealed another layer of divide within the team. Their quiet disagreements showed that commitment to structure and commitment to instinct could coexist, yet never fully merge. Staubach's need for order clashed with Garrison's belief in adaptability. This taught Staubach that not every conflict needs to be resolved. Some simply exist as part of the fabric of a team built on different identities. When all these truths are woven together, a more complete portrait emerges. Staubach did not lead by perfection. He led through conflict. He managed a team filled with strong personalities, competing philosophies, and emotional volatility. Each conflict forced him to evolve. Each moment of tension shaped a new dimension of his leadership. His discipline held the team together. His willingness to adapt allowed them to win. His ability to endure criticism, absorb resentment, and maintain composure transformed him into the pillar that Dallas relied on. The cold truth is that the legacy of Roger Staubach was not built solely on touchdowns, comebacks, or Super Bowl rings. It was built on the invisible scars created by internal battles. He navigated disagreements that never reached the press. He carried responsibilities that extended far beyond the huddle. The weight of expectation and the pressure of leading America's team forged a man whose greatness came from enduring what others never saw. Staubach retired with dignity at the end of the 1979 season, leaving behind a team that stood taller because of the conflicts he survived. His legacy lives not in the myth of Captain America, but in the truth of the man who balanced service discipline and humanity under the harshest spotlight in football. He remains a symbol of what leadership truly demands: resolve, sacrifice, humility, vision. His story proves that even the most iconic heroes confront shadows. What separates them is the ability to carry those shadows without letting the world see the weight. Now that the 5 hidden truths shaping Roger Staubach's legacy have come to light, the question turns to you. Every rivalry revealed a different side of Captain America. Every conflict forced him to choose between duty and instinct, between control and trust, between the image the world demanded and the reality only his teammates saw. These truths defined the internal world of a man who carried the hopes of America's team while managing tensions that rarely made it past the locker room door. Which of these hidden conflicts struck you the hardest? Was it the philosophical war with Tom Landry that questioned the balance between system and instinct? Was it the quiet strain with Drew Pearson that exposed the cost of authority in moments of greatness? Was it the clash with Cliff Harris that highlighted the emotional divide within the Cowboys' identity? Was it the overlooked resentment from Calvin Hill that revealed the difficulty of sharing the spotlight? Or was it the silent divide, with Danny White that showed how the passing of a torch can fracture even the strongest bonds. These are the stories that shape legends beyond the highlight reels. They offer a deeper understanding of what it means to lead under immense pressure and what it costs to uphold an image built on discipline and belief. Staubach's legacy becomes richer when we examine the shadows that lived behind the victories, the human truths that never appeared on television screens. If you found value in uncovering these hidden layers of football history, subscribe to NFL Hidden Truths. This channel brings you the untold stories of the men who defined the golden age of the sport. Stay with us for more deep dives into the rivalries, sacrifices, and cold truths that shaped the legends of the gridiron.